Welcome back to part 2 of our Medicaid training. I apologize for the cut and the cutoff. The camera ran out of battery when we were recording, and so I apologize for that. And so we've charged the battery, and so we'll just have 2 parts of our training. So welcome back to part 2 of the Medicaid training. Wanted to make sure that I'm not doing too much overlap from what I talked about before, as well as not skipping anything. So I believe we left off with talking about grievances. So as I said before, Doug is our quality and compliance officer. He is responsible for responding to any grievances that are placed and given to us here at Heart-Centered Counseling. So if anyone does have a grievance, they would write a letter or make a phone call. Doug would become aware of it, and within our policies, he will respond to that person within 15 days in writing of a response from the grievance and a resolution. And if it needs to continue from there, then it would continue from there. But Doug is the person who's in charge of that. So if you have any questions about that, you can ask Doug and what the process is. Doug would be the best person to talk to about that. So the next section that we're going to talk about briefly, and a lot of you already know this because we all are mandated reporters, but it's just going to be talking about reporting abuse. And on our PowerPoint, I have given different phone numbers of who to contact with each different county and each different city if abuse does need to be reported. So like I said, and as we all know, we're all mandated reporters. Here in Larimer County, if there is an abuse claim on a child from a family member, so someone in the same family, you would call the hub. It's just the resource that is here within the county that they kind of funnel through all of the abuse claims and reports and make sure that they are being thought through well, and they would give the response to you. So the hub is the place to contact. On our slide, on our PowerPoint, I have put their website address as well as their phone number. So if you have any questions about that, it's there. If there's an abuse situation by a child who is not, and the person who is abusing is not a family member of the child, you would call the police department, and so I've put the phone number for that too. They may ask you what the address of the person is, of the child, if you call the police department, because they need to know if it's county or city. If it's within the city, they'll be able to handle it. If it's within the county, they may give you the sheriff's number. But either way, if you have anything or something to report, you can call either the hub or the police department, and they will direct you to the right place. They also work very closely together, and so if they need to report to one organization or the next, they would be able to do that. For adults, again, call the police department. In Larimer County, call the police department. In Weld County, for children, there is a Colorado Child Protection Hotline, and that's what they will direct you to make a report. And they will, so you make the report through the hotline, they send it back to the appropriate county, and then the county goes from there. And again, I also put the police department for Greeley on our slideshow. So for adults, anyone 18 to 65, you can call. There's the police department information for Loveland and Fort Collins, as well as the Weld County Police Department, and also the Weld County Adult Protective Services. You can call them, and that phone number is also on the PowerPoint. For older adults, 65 and older, there is a new law within the last, I would say, probably 3 or so years, maybe 2 or 3 years, that if there's an elder person who is experiencing any kind of abuse, they are asking that we call the police department. Again, if we're unsure of who to call, if you call one of the organizations over the other, they work very closely together, and so they would be able to contact. If you call DHS, they'd be able to contact the police department. If you call the police department, they'll contact DHS, or best know how to refer you to the proper person. So here's the phone numbers on our PowerPoint, just so that you have access to them. But we just wanted to touch base on that because it is, we're mandated reporters, and it's also very important that Colorado Access knows that we have all of this information as well. So after hours coverage and emergency coverage. So our agency, we do not provide after hours and emergency coverage. And so sometimes things come up with clients that happen after hours, or upon emergencies. And so we wanted to make sure that we are providing clients with the appropriate information to be able to know who to contact if that does happen with them. So on our PowerPoint, starting on slide 23, there is information on those agencies and the people that they can call and contact. Not only do we want to make sure that we're leaving this on our voicemail, we don't want to just say on our voicemail, call 911 or go to your nearest emergency department. We also want to be specific to say if you're in a crisis, you can go to these places. So I will give you the places of where they can go. If we're in Larimer County, Summit Stone has a walk-in crisis unit, and that's here in Fort Collins. So if a person lives in Loveland, they would have to get to Fort Collins if they want to do the walk-in crisis center. And it's over on Riverside, not too far from one of our offices. There's also the emergency department at PVH. There's the emergency department at MCR, as well as the McKee Hospital there in Loveland. And so any emergency department that you can direct people to go to there as well, or call 911. In Loveland, again, the best place is Summit Stone, and then McKee or the emergency department. In Weld County, we are able to send clients to North Range Behavioral Health if needed for crisis management, and they have a crisis walk-in center. Again, we can also refer clients to any of the emergency departments, which are the emergency departments located in the hospitals, as well as the emergency departments that are located out of the hospital. So Northern Colorado Medical Center is in Greeley, and that's a Banner hospital, but there's also a University Health Colorado emergency department in Greeley as well. So I've put all that information on the PowerPoint as well for your knowledge. There's also a new behavioral health hospital in Johnstown that would be able to take crisis walk-in patients as well, and that information is also on the PowerPoint. Colorado Access also has a crisis line, and so I've given you that number as well, and they also have a mobile team, and usually it's just the mobile teams associated within the area or the county that you're in. So if someone calls the mobile crisis team for behavioral access, they will most likely contact the mobile team through PVH or Banner hospitals to be able to go to that person's house. On slide 27, there's a few other needs, some miscellaneous things that we will talk about for requirements for Medicaid and Colorado Access. So if you have a client who misses repeated appointments, we do have our own policies that we contact the person within 10 or 15 or so minutes just to check in on them to make sure that they're doing okay, try to reschedule something, but just make sure that they're doing all right and that you would love to reschedule with them. If you're able to contact the client and reschedule, please document that. If you try to reach out to the client and you can't get a hold of them, please document that as well. So any kind of missed appointment, document that there was a missed appointment and document how you've tried to reach out to that person. There's also some transportation availability. So if you have a client who struggles with transportation, Colorado Access will pay for transportation for people to come to mental health, and that's through Transit Colorado. They are changing their name, so I'm not 100% sure what the new name is, but the information will still be the same, and they'll be able to direct you to the proper website and phone number. So I've also put that on our PowerPoint as well. Usually for the transportation, the company, it is a taxi service. The company will need at least 48 hours of advance notice to be able to schedule the appointment and make sure that there's a driver there. If your client misses the taxi and doesn't come, they will have a problem trying to reschedule again, and so if they have to cancel for any reason, it's really important that the client also contacts the company who's going to be driving them so that they can continue to use those services. If they're trying to schedule an appointment with the taxi service within 24 hours, they may call you as a therapist just to verify the information. And what they would need is they would need the person's name, their address. They do need the Medicaid number so that they know how to bill. But all that just stays within the taxi company to be able to bring the person here. So I just wanted to go over a list again in the PowerPoint of the documentation that is required for every chart. Again, a consent to treatment, a release of information, access and assessments and screenings, admission summary, so like your intake summary, service plan and treatment plan, any reassessments that may be done during your time with the client, any progress notes, whether that's a progress note with the client, a family member, or any outside services, any medication administration or monitoring records. So we don't do that here, but if the client does tell you that they've changed medication, just document that as well in a note. We don't do medication management here or prescribing because we're not physicians, but we do, if they provide that information, just keep it documented in their chart. Documentation of ongoing services provided by external services, so that those ancillary services, doctors, other therapists or counselors they've seen in the past, school personnel, even different family members who are involved in their care. Acknowledgements and disclosures, legal and court paperwork if there are any, and then discharge summaries. And so I just wanted to go through again, just to have a list of the documentation that is needed in every chart. So for a discharge, we'll go through 3 different scenarios of a discharge. One is a client no-show, and the policy through Access Behavioral and what we need to do for client no-shows. And if they continue to no-show and we don't have any response from them, we'll discharge them from our services, but there is a process and a procedure to go through for that. The client requests for discharge, whether you feel like they're ready or not, but they're requesting for discharge, or the client is clinically ready for discharge. So we'll go through the no-show and the Colorado Access policy first. So again, we reach out to our clients if they do not come to an appointment, making sure that they're okay. Again, documenting every way that you've tried to reach out to them. If there's still no response and there's been a couple no-shows, then we need to send a form letter that says, if we don't hear from you by such and such date, we will be discharging you from the services, but please know that you can restart services at any time. But we need to send that form letter so that they're aware that we are discharging them from our caseload. If there is still no response, and if this is a client that you're worried about their safety, then it would be really beneficial, and we are asking you to reach out to Access Behavioral because they have case managers that will be able to reach out to that person as well, just to ensure safety. So you don't have to do this for every client, but if it is a client that you're worried that it's not safe and you haven't heard anything from them and there are some safety concerns, then go ahead and reach out to Access Behavioral. Tell them everything that you have been doing to reach this person so that they can have an opportunity to reach out to them as well. And again, it's just for the safety of the client to make sure that everything is okay. And I have listed the phone numbers of how you can reach Access Behavioral Care on our PowerPoint. So if a client is requesting to be discharged, then we discharge them from our services. We document everything as well as follow in all of our discharge procedures, which is the discharge summary, and we'll go through that in a little bit. And then if a client is clinically ready for discharge, even if they're asking for a discharge or not, we need to be able to talk with them about, hey, you're doing really well, my services are not needed anymore, and so then we discharge them for that reason. Again, we go through that conversation and maybe step down from meeting every week to maybe meeting every 2 weeks, and then maybe once a month, or whatever is needed for your client at that time. Documenting the process, as well as at the end when there is a discharge, doing your discharge summary. One thing I didn't mention with if there's no-shows, we do also need to do a discharge summary for anyone who's a no-show that we discharge from our service. So anyone that's discharging, we have to do a discharge summary. If you're working with children, there's a couple things that I wanted to point out that we have become aware of, and there may be more things that we become aware of later on, but these are the things that we know. So Colorado Access does not reimburse for something that we would call play therapy. They don't reimburse for play therapy if it's done alone with the child. They do reimburse for play therapy if it's done in coordination with the family and or adults in their life, so foster family, anyone like that. And the reasoning behind that, it does make sense. It does make some things a little more difficult, but it does make sense, is Access Behavioral wants to make sure that whatever we're teaching and however we're trying to provide interventions and teaching new skills to the children that we're working with, they also want to make sure that we're providing and teaching those things to the adults in their life as well, to be able to be consistent from what's being learned in your office, here in counseling, as well as what's being done at home, and so there's some good follow through and wraparound. So if you do play therapy, and I know a lot of us do, you can still do the play therapy, but make sure you're doing that in coordination with the family, or the parents or the foster family, to ensure that the other adults in this child's life is also knowing what are the benefits, what are you trying to teach the child, and how can they help continue that learning and that process in the home. If you have any questions about that, feel free to visit with me or Carl, and we can help you as much as we can. So with children, we also have to be aware and document some developmental history and assessments. And so I've given a list, and some of this is on our assessment, on our intake form, but there may be some things that aren't on our intake form that we just want to make sure that we are documenting in an initial assessment, and as the treatment goes along, if there's a reassessment being done. So we want to ask about any significant prenatal or perinatal events and how that may have affected our client's development. Physical growth and development, emotional growth and development, social development of peer relationships and family dynamics, cognitive and intellectual growth and development, academic and school adjustment. It's also really important to make sure that we have in the record of what school our client is going to. And then daily activities and interests. And so you do get a lot of that in the first initial contact and that initial assessment, but we need to make sure for any children and adolescents that we're seeing, so anyone under the age of 18, that we do have this information and it is documented in their chart. And so I wanted to make you aware of that as well. So if you do any psychological testings, there's another form that has to be filled out, and I have put it on our PowerPoint. So if you do psychological testings, here's this form. You may or may not get reimbursed for that, but I wanted to provide the form. So fill out the form and fax it to the number that's on the PowerPoint. Some other things, if we have a client who has suicidal or homicidal ideation, or they have challenges in their life that are affecting their daily living and their ability to care for themselves or people living with them, or dependents if they're living with them, we must refer them to appropriate professionals as soon as possible. So that's even an older adult who may be struggling with some things at home. Do we need to try to talk with them about getting connected with different physical therapies that can come and help them rebuild their strength at home, or different things like that. If someone is suicidal, again, we need to provide the support and resources right away, if they have a plan and know how they're going to initiate the plan, as well as any harm to anyone else. So we need to have clear documentation of any crisis management that's being done with this client, and it needs to include any interventions that you've tried and the responses from the client and family members if they're involved as well. Need to document if there was someone who is suicidal in your and you needed to send them to the emergency room or something right away. You need to document how transportation happened, or if you're visiting with someone over the phone, how did they get to a safe place, how did they get to the emergency department, how did they get to the physician. We need to be able to talk about that if there is that immediate risk. We need to document the response and follow-up and any disposition of the client during our intervention and what their response was to the intervention. So again, just document all of the preventative services that you're providing, and again, If you don't document it, it didn't happen. And so we just want to ensure that we're documenting all the amazing and good work that we're doing with our clients. So when it does come time for an audit, we are trying to prepare ourselves in the best way possible as an organization, and the way that we're doing that is making sure that everyone is aware of the policies and procedures that we expect, as well as the policies and procedures for Colorado Access. So in one of the ways that we're doing that is having this training available to everyone, having our policies and procedures available to everyone, and ensuring that everyone is reading them and understanding them. And then also we will be doing internal audits, and so there will be a couple internal audits a month, but basically everyone will be audited at least once a year. And during an audit, say if someone were auditing my paperwork, they would be auditing 3 of my clients chosen at random that would be Access Behavioral clients, Colorado Access clients, and they'll be looking to make sure that I have all the required documentation uploaded in TA. They would be looking to make sure that a diagnosis for a client that I have given is supported with evidence of why that diagnosis happened, that a thorough assessment and intake has been done, that treatment plans have been completed on time, and that the treatment plans are strength-based, and that continued progress notes are happening, as well as any notes in progress and documentation of any ancillary services that are being used. Discharge summaries are complete with all the information that's needed, and again, all the information that you need for all of those is in this PowerPoint, listed bullet by bullet and step by step, as well as in our policies and procedures. If Colorado Access or CMS does come for an audit, they will most likely just first go to Carl, gain access to people's TA accounts through Carl, and then do their audit. We don't know what they're going to be looking for at the time. They could be looking at everything. They could be looking at one thing in particular. We don't know. The most important thing to remember is if someone does come in for an audit or a survey, that just to remain calm, they're here to help us. They're here to help ensure that we're providing the best care possible, and that we are working well with their standards and what they're needing. So they're not here to take our money away or to shut us down, but they're here to help us. And so try to go into a conversation with any surveyors or auditors with that thought, because they do want to help us, and they just want to make sure that we're doing a good job. If they do come to you and ask you questions, you can be direct. I use the example of, it would be, give the same information that you would if you have to go to court with someone, for someone. You can be direct. You don't have to share too much, but answer their questions. When I was first out of college, I worked at a hospital, and I was pretty young and naive, and we had an auditor come in, and I just answered all of their questions with long answers. It wasn't like yes or no answers, which they should have just had yes or no answers. And not that I got in trouble or the company got in trouble, but it definitely was a learning experience, and I learned how to talk with surveyors differently. And so again, you want to give them the information that they're asking for, but you don't need to go into detail unless they ask for some of the detail. But again, you want to make sure that you're protecting the privacy of your clients, as well as providing what's in your notes and leading them back to your documentation, or leading them back to our policies and procedures. So if they have a question of, when do you do discharge, what does your discharge summary include? Well, according to our policies and procedures, which I can show you here, it says blah, 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 blah is needed for our discharge summaries. And so if those are good questions, those are good ways to answer surveyors or auditors. If you have any questions when it happens or even before it happens, please let me know. I can help you as best as I can. Carl, Doug, anyone can help you as best as we can. Again, just a reminder, we're not going to know everything that they're looking for before they come in. All we can do is be best prepared, and be honest, as well as continuing to protect the confidentiality of our clients. So that is the end of the training. If you have any questions, like I've said before, please feel free to contact me, or you can talk with Doug or Carl, and we will try to provide answers as soon as we can, or answer your questions right away. If we don't have the answers, we will find the information for you. Thank you so much for taking your time to do this. Again, I'm sorry for the 2 parts, and I hope you were able to bear with me. Thank you so much.